You're listening to the Secure Dad Podcast. Discover ways to secure your home, protect your family, and embrace your role as a protector parent. Welcome, friend. I'm Andy Murphy, the creator of the Secure Dad. This podcast serves to help families become proactive in their safety. The information I share on this podcast is for general information purposes only. My goal is to empower you to make safer decisions for yourself and your family. Today, I get to sit down and talk with two active duty police officers. Together, we're going to talk about the many ways that we can keep danger distant and prevent crime. All of that and more ahead on the Secure Dad Podcast. Our personal information is all over the internet, and as adults, we're kind of used to that. But are you really okay with your kids' information being out there too? I created the very popular guide, OSINT for Parents, that you can download for free today. The guide walks you through how much of your personal information is open to anyone online, how to delete your online information, and how to protect your kids. To get this guide, click on the link in today's show notes. Again, it's absolutely free. You can run your very own home security assessment with help from me. I created my family home security assessment for protector parents who want the definitive details on how to make a home a hard target for a criminal. This 12-page checklist offers more than 100 actionable steps that will increase the security of your home while making it a peaceful place to live. Download it today and make your home safer tonight. Get your copy at the Secure Dad store by clicking on the link in today's podcast notes. Today, my guests are two active duty police officers. They are also the host of the Rusty Cuffs podcast. I wanted to have them on to share with us a look at what it's like to be in law enforcement today, and of course, what we can do to protect our families. Here's my conversation with Officer Rusty and Officer Cuffs. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me on the show. I know you both value your privacy, so please feel free to share only what you want, but give us an idea about your law enforcement experience. Rusty, we'll start things off with you.
Andy, glad to be here. I've got about 11 years in law enforcement between two departments. The first department was inner city, and now I'm working in a suburb of that same city.
Very cool. Cuffs, what about you?
All right. So, Andy, thanks for having us. I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years, and I have going into my 7th year of law enforcement with this agency. We kind of joined this one there about the same time.
Yeah, roughly.
Very cool. So you guys have you've done some stuff together, and you are recording a podcast now, which I appreciate. I think I texted you once there, Rusty, and was like, I almost drove off the road laughing at the first 5 minutes of your show. So give us a quick promo for the show. Where can we find it? Give us the name, all that sort of stuff.
So it's called the Rusty Cuffs podcast. It's available pretty much on any major podcast platform. We interact with all of our listeners on Instagram at Rusty Cuffs. The tagline for the show is the lighter, darker, and weirder side of law enforcement. We don't take ourselves very serious at all. Very seldom are we sober. And we're talking the way we would talk if we weren't recording. We just try and put it into somewhat of a format that's listenable, because if we talk the way we normally talk, it would be impossible to listen. Your ears would bleed.
Yeah,
gotcha.
We try and throw. We always throw like a tactical or gear thing in episodes, and it's not just geared towards law enforcement. There's a lot of stuff in there that we try and cover for, just the curious person that has an idea or interest in law enforcement, or the people that just want a little bit of a better idea about safety or tactics or equipment.
Yeah, we do get a lot of listeners that are like, they consider themselves future law enforcement. Maybe they're in school for criminal justice now, and they're looking for something that's going to be a little bit more realistic than what they're getting in like an academy or an academic setting.
So, guys, I'll ask you the big question first, and this could probably just be an entire podcast all to itself. But how hard is it to be in law enforcement right now?
I think we're spoiled just because we're in a pretty good neighborhood. If you're a city cop anywhere, it's rough right now. All of my friends in my previous department are really hating life. But where we are, I mean, the worse it gets there, the more people like us here. which is
Good.
pretty nice.
Yeah.
But it's not. I mean, it's not an easy job. I mean, even for us, I mean, crime has definitely ticked upward.
I was going to say kind of similar. It varies by department, state, and city. We're very blessed where we are. It kind of ebb and flows. We call it, it's swinging with a pendulum. So sometimes it's great, sometimes it's terrible. Frustrating thing I think is police are kind of caught in the middle in like a political discussion and political fray
Right.
where we're portrayed in a positive or negative light as a political tool, and it can be frustrating getting caught in the middle. But I've lately I've been getting more and more thank yous. I had a child hand me a drawing like of me because I was parked outside of their house, like doing some enforcement, and it was like better than any award or medal I could have ever gotten. Like a kid drew this while I'm hanging out there, writing cards for speeding in their neighborhood.
That's
So
awesome.
you feel the appreciation, especially up here where we are. It changes, and people have to be reminded sometimes, especially the cops working their butts off, that they are appreciated.
Yeah. And that's true. That's awesome about the kid doing the
Oh,
drawing.
I keep it in my truck like every time I drive to work, and I looked at it the other day. It makes me feel great.
That is awesome. So Rusty, just a second ago, you kind of alluded to this. I feel like crime has gotten more intense this year, but sometimes I wonder, is that what like the news algorithms are like feeding me? Is that what social media is feeding me? But from your personal experience, both of you, is crime getting worse, or am I out there in left field?
No, it's absolutely getting worse. And not just in bad neighborhoods. I mean, we've seen a huge uptick in crimes in upper middle class suburbs. If you're in a good neighborhood, you can kind of keep some violent crime at arm's length, but those neighborhoods end up getting targeted for other types of crimes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, crime, I would say for the most part, has definitely gotten worse. I mean, what did we say? What was it? 2 weeks ago, we were recording on subway crime in New York City.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
Subway crime had gone up like 28% between last year and this year.
Yeah, and like property crime is on the rise, and I could cite I listed a bunch of statistics and surveys and studies, and it's like it's too boring, and people get bogged down in numbers. Generally, everything's been up. We've witnessed firsthand experience, like residential burglaries went down and are still trending downwards, but
Cool. Okay.
but people are going into cars if you leave them unlocked on the street. It happened to me like just last week. The one day I didn't lock my car on the street and somebody went through it. They didn't even take the change, but they stole a car a couple blocks over. They're looking for cars with key fobs in them.
Gotcha.
We've been seeing everything kind of go up, except for because of the pandemic, everybody's home. That's the one thing. They're generally criminals are risk adverse, and there's higher chance of being caught doing that.
Right.
But out on the street, violent crime has been going up and up and up, and it's frustrating. Our work has absolutely increased.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Give me an idea of what's a property crime and what is a violent crime, so that people aren't necessarily confusing the two.
So a violent crime, obviously, confrontational burglary would be that. So somebody breaks into the house while you're in there, and holds you at gunpoint, knife point, that sort of thing, or
a robbery.
Robbery.
Even though there may not be like violence, it's still considered a violent crime.
So,
even though more left-leaning cities are now laying down robberies.
If you point a gun at someone, it's not a violent crime until you shoot them, I guess, in some areas.
Okay, all right.
The assaults, the other violent stuff, and then property crime would be like, hey, I forgot to put my lawnmower in the garage and now it's gone, sort of a thing.
Gotcha.
Shoplifting, the catalytic converters that are everywhere in the country right now.
Right.
So like violent crime has absolutely been on the rise as well as property crimes, but I understand there is a delineation in what's going on. It's weird because the lines can blur sometimes, and sometimes a non-violent crime can turn into a violent crime. And
so, in your area, what are the most frequent crimes that you guys are seeing?
We're getting a lot of auto theft, a lot of catalytic converter theft. And then we'll go through like ebbs and flows of commercial burglaries, where we'll get sometimes multiple burgs a night, and then maybe go a week, and then all of a sudden you get hit with another night. It's usually one or two people that are out there and they're just committing let's say 3 burglaries over the course of an evening. Usually it's the same. Usually it's the same person throwing, a brick or something through a storefront
Yeah,
building in there.
there's
Gotcha.
patterns and stuff like that, and I'm more. We work different shifts now, and I'm more on an analytical side and responsive side than Rusty here. So like we'll follow that pattern of that guy throwing that brick through that window, and it's like, all right, we got him, and then the next week another guy's doing the same thing, and it's just we're pulling our hair out sometimes.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it can be frustrating. Absolutely, the theft from vehicles are especially the catalytic converters is just it's crazy everywhere.
Gotcha. And so when it comes to like, people breaking into cars like that, it's cars that are parked outside. People aren't like breaking into garages necessarily. It's kind of like easy, low-hanging fruit kind of stuff.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I've even heard people say that they're looking for cars that the side view mirrors aren't folded in. Because in those
new ones,
the newer cars, when you lock the car, the side view mirrors fold in. So they look for those with the side view mirrors out, and then they know that there's a fob in the car.
Yeah.
So they
Okay.
can tell that driving by.
Okay. We learned something here.
But they'll go. They're bold. They'll go right down the driveway and pull on cars and doors, and it could be parked right in front of your house with camera on, as what happened to me. But I have witnessed the garage thing once or twice. I've taken reports for that.
Oh yeah, if they know there's something in there,
Yeah,
they're not going to stop to. They'll go into a garage if it's worth
Yeah.
it. They say if the juice is worth the squeeze,
Yeah.
they'll take it.
and that's another thing. If you leave your car unlocked, you didn't leave the key fob in there, but you left your garage door opener. That might get
Yeah.
stolen. They might come back the next night, or they might do it that night. You might not wake up to that. So there's multiple things that you have to secure in your vehicle every single night to prevent these things from happening.
Yeah, and we have had people we say break in, but open a car and open a garage to see what else is in the garage.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. And that kind of leads into my next question here. When it comes to home security, what are the common mistakes that you're seeing homeowners make?
I would say the biggest mistake I see is that people think that it's not going to happen to them.
Mhm.
Nobody thinks that they're ever going to be a victim. They think that they're insulated in an area, and that these crimes happen to other people. It's not going to happen to them. So I think that's the biggest mistake people make. That's more of a mental thing. When it actually comes to the homes, what I found is people are careless. They leave doors and windows unlocked. They leave valuables in plain sight. So if you have a big bay window, and like now we're going into the holidays, if you're wrapping presents around the holidays, don't go out and leave a bunch of stuff on your kitchen table that somebody can see from a backyard window.
Right.
If you've got a stack of iPads, someone's going to break in to steal a stack of iPads.
Yeah.
Yeah. To kind of expand on that, another thing, like we're coming to the holiday seasons, people like to share, oh, we're going away to this place for the holiday season or something like that. They share that on social media. I get it. You want to share with your friends like where we're going, but I practice this too. I share all my travel plans with a few people, like one or two, and then after I come back, that's when I post all that travel stuff. So people don't know exactly when I went. Again, leaving keys in cars, like you get home, you just throw the key fob in the cup holder and go inside. It's just something we can't do anymore.
There was we did have a couple people that were targeted in shopping center parking lots.
Oh yeah,
where if let's say it was a lady with her purse in the cart or something that maybe they followed them out of like an Apple store to their car, they'll just drive like behind them through the lanes, and as they're loading up their stuff, someone will just either hang out the window or run out of the car real quick and grab something out of the cart, and then they back in the car and they're gone.
Yeah.
Leaving windows unlocked is a big thing, or forgetting to bolt the back door because you lock the front but you don't bolt the back. Not having cameras in this day and age, they're getting more and more affordable. If you haven't made the plunge, I think it is a good time because they are a deterrent. It worked on my neighbor's driveway, but not mine for some reason. But it really depends. Don't take shortcuts with your safety and your security.
I like that. Don't take shortcuts with your safety and security. Absolutely. I tell people, I actually wrote a book on home security, and I say, every night I go to bed and I think, what? This could happen to me. I leave the house to go on vacation. I leave the house to go out, and it's like, you know what? Somebody could rob the house today. What is it that I have to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? So even though like I run this podcast and I do all these things, I'm myself saying, you know what? I could be the victim of a crime. So let's do everything that I can today to make sure that doesn't happen.
It's a paranoid way of thinking, but I mean, you should assume that it's going to happen to you. Because if you're going through your life figuring, okay, today's going to be the day that something's going to happen, you're going to make those efforts to not allow that to happen.
Right.
So if I assume that tonight's going to be the night that I'm going to go to bed and someone's going to come through one of the many unlocked doors in my house, maybe tonight I'll actually go and look and make sure that all the doors are locked.
Very cool. Yeah, the my audience, I love to call them protector parents because, while all parents really want to protect their kids, it's the person who gets up and double checks the doors if those are locked. If that's you, you are the protector parent in that relationship. That's who you are. That's what you do. So yeah, making sure that all that kind of stuff is taken care of is absolutely the way that we should go. So, as officers, how do you guys feel that, citizens can better protect themselves in public? What is something that you really want us to know about being safe when we're out?
I mean, the number one thing is situational awareness. Too many people have their head buried in their phone. I mean, it's the most obvious things, right? Look around and see what's going on around you. There's a reason that when you go out, like at least for cops and I, off-duty cops always find other off-duty cops. We don't have to know each other, but we're the only people that are looking around at people. So there's only two types of people that do that, right? And it's usually cops and perps. So perps are assessing victims and cops are looking for perps assessing victims. So it doesn't take much for me to catch somebody's eye and go, okay, yeah, that guy's usually built like me. He's wearing a baseball cap, a G-Shock watch.
I feel like I'm being singled out right now.
There's a uniform. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I think the best thing is just you got to pay attention to what's going on around you. And then I would say the next thing would be well-versed in first aid. And if you're inclined firearms, I mean, we're both big proponents of carrying every day. There's no reason, if you're legally allowed to, there's no reason that you shouldn't. But if you don't feel comfortable, I get it. But first aid is probably going to save you 10 times over than a firearm will.
Yeah. Other things that, like he's touched on it, but I like to say, make yourself to appear to be a bad mark or target or victim. Make that criminal think, that might not be the best person for me to victimize today. Whether it's you're aware and looking around, you look a little more in place than other people, you're focusing on the surroundings. But another thing, physical and mental fitness, those are huge steps. Are they going to go after the guy that's in the great shape? Probably not. Are they going to, and you can't change your height. I know you can't change your health too much, but there's steps you can take to, be a little bit less appealing.
Right.
Andy, I don't know who the guest was, but a while back you had somebody that I guess hunts down child traffickers.
Yes.
Good episode.
And you had said, I wish I could do what you do, but it's, I don't have that skill set.
Right.
We don't have that skill set either, right? That's a special set of skills that I've accumulated over a long time. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
All right.
Taken.
But too many people look at their safety and their security the same way, where they're like, well, I just can't do it. You're the only person that's going to protect you and your family. I mean, there's as cops, we want to be great, right? We want to show up and save the day. But the reality is we're going to show up after the fact and take a report.
Yep.
It's very few and far between where we show up and bad guys still there and we actually save the day. And most of the time when we save the day, it's a medical issue. It's not really a crime-related issue. More people need to get those skills, which they're not hard. If you want to protect yourself, it's not a lot that you need to learn.
No.
Just be proficient in a few things, and you can do a lot when it comes to your family's safety.
Yeah. The other side of that would be overestimating your abilities. If you do carry or you do have some sort of martial arts background, make sure you practice those skills fairly regularly so you are proficient with them going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot of times, people, they go and they take that one firearms class that's maybe required by the state for you to conceal carry, and they think, oh, I'm going to be safe and
Yep.
and everything that I do, and like it's a good start. That's what I tell people. It's a great start, but continue those skills, and actually, especially with firearms training, it's just fun. It's fun to
it's a
go and
blast.
do. So
it's a blast, but a lot of those classes, like if you want to be proficient with a firearm, and you should feel like you're awful,
Yeah.
because a lot of those classes are set up for you to feel like you're awesome.
Yeah, to feel
Right.
good at the end of the day.
Yeah, after that 1 or 2 day class, and you feel like you're John Wick, and
Yeah.
that's not reality. Those
Right.
some of those classes are designed for you to get that impression.
Yeah, if you go to an open like 3-gun competition, and at the end of the day you feel like you have nowhere near the competition, that's what you sometimes need to feel like. Be humbled a little bit before you
Mhm.
go forward and be like, I need to get like those guys.
When looking at kids growing up today, what are the safety lessons that you feel parents should be imparting to their children today?
Well, I'm gonna defer to Rusty because I actually don't have kids yet.
And
It's
I've got
coming one
3.
day.
It's-
You're normal
it is.
now. One day you won't be normal anymore.
It's funny. Before we started recording, I left them alone with 2 of my 3,
Uh-huh.
and I expected to come back in and have them both just screaming and just hand them off. Just say, forget it, I don't want to do this anymore. But
Mhm.
unfortunately for him, they were all very well behaved.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, to answer your question, I would say that, my oldest is still young, so we're getting ahead of ourselves when we're trying to teach him these things yet. But for the kids that we deal with at work, I want them to understand like the downstream consequences of both their actions and their inactions. They should understand what they do and how it affects not just them and their future, but like the other people that are in the world, not just their families, but just the random person that they have to interact with. And then maybe we can go back to situational awareness, and they should be situationally aware. I would say with older kids, or I can use my wife as an example. When I do certain things, I want her to know that there's a reason that I do certain things. There's a reason that I might park a certain place. There's a reason I may cross a parking lot. And I point them out. And now she doesn't care. But I still feel like if I don't do it, I'm doing her a disservice. So
Right.
as the gears are turning in my head, like if we're walking out of a mall and I see somebody that's maybe backed into a parking spot, they're sitting in the driver's seat, and they're in a transitional area, but they're not transitioning, right? They're not getting their stuff together to leave their car. They're just kind of sitting there.
Right.
That's somebody that you want to pay attention to. And there's just a million things that are like that eventually you get an eye for.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just the dad brain, but you just, it's little pieces of knowledge that you want to try and drop on the people that are around you.
Right.
And hopefully if something horrible happens, they can say, oh, wait a minute. Dad told me about this. This is a thing that happened to that guy when he was at work. It kind of looks like this. All right, I'm going to take myself out of the situation. Without all the gore, kind of explain how people got themselves into a really bad situation so that maybe they don't stumble into it themselves.
Yeah, I practice those same kind of lessons with my wife, and sometimes I get the eye roll. Sometimes she's like, "Oh, that's a really good point," or "You're a crazy person." And I'm like, "I am," but another thing, like just my own 2 cents. I was a rowdy teen, and my parents, from the stories I hear, secondhand from aunts and uncles and family friends, they were rowdy too. But tell your kids the truth, tell them the bad stories and the mistakes that you made, and explain what lesson you learned from that, and when it is appropriate or okay to leave a situation, a party, a social event. Sometimes good kids do bad things, and a healthy amount of skepticism of what your kids, especially teens, is up to, sometimes can help get ahead of the situation.
Yeah, that's good. I like that you're talking about being open with your kids. Tell them what you did. Tell them what you learned. I think that's good because it's not just, you're not telling them some sort of allegory or something, from a children's book. This is your life. This is real. This is gritty. This is what I had to do with. And I think your kids, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. They kind of want to know what you were like before they came into your life. Like what was mom like? What was dad like? That sort of thing. And I really think that kind of gives them a good glimpse into who you are as a person, and also in this particular case, as a protector.
So my kids are going to listen to Rusty Cuffs, and they're going to know way too much about what we were like.
Yeah.
So there's a permanent record of it.
I've thought about that too. It's funny you bring that up because, maybe one day my son will want to sit down and listen to these podcasts. Maybe, maybe years after I'm gone. I love you, buddy. Our kids are gonna hear this. They're probably gonna hear your podcast, that sort of thing. But yeah, this I think is also a decent record for them to understand, what's going on in our lives at this point in time, and how we're really working to try to make our family safer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it also shows them that we're really two different people. I mean, there's Dad and then there's Rusty.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when they're older, they'll appreciate Rusty. But right now, they need Dad.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, they do. It's funny you guys are talking about, trying to explain situational awareness in real time to your wives. I try to do that as well. And it was really hard for me in the beginning because I couldn't articulate what specifically I was seeing. And once I really started working on that, I got to train with Greg and Brian at Arcadia Cognerati, and that really helped me to be able to become a better communicator, to better try to educate my wife, and definitely better to educate my son. So a lot of times I would just get frustrated because it would be very clear to me, but I could not find the words necessary to tell my wife really quickly why we're doing this. So for anybody out there who's, just, coming along, on their own speed, take the time to figure out what it was that triggered you, and then go back and have that conversation later, when you're just sitting on the couch later and you're not out in public, and maybe you can have that conversation again. You might still get the eye roll, but it's worth doing.
Well, what do? We will learn from life experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're in the advantageous career where we get to see everybody's worst life experience.
Sure.
So we get to learn from thousands of people in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, that's life is a good and cruel teacher all at once. So, you guys as law enforcement officers, what is it that you wish that every citizen knew to keep themselves from becoming the victim of a crime?
You want to field this?
Yeah. This sounds weird, but I'd like to say think like a criminal.
Yes.
Would you victimize you? Set a crook to catch a crook. Those kinds of things. Yeah. Have that discussion with the family of avoiding confrontation, even if you're the baddest, toughest guy or gal around. Like, be able to put your ego or testosterone, whatever it is, aside and think about you and your family safety. Take that deep breath, the box breathing drill, something like that. Take those 4 seconds and be like, okay, how am I going to get away from this or around this obstacle?
Well, the time to be a tough guy is not when your family's there.
Never. I mean, honestly, the time to be a tough guy, those situations are so few and far between. And even, I don't have kids, but end of the day, I have a wife to get back to. And at work, yeah, I'm the tough guy. But I'm not Superman. So knowing which situations and how to act safely is very important. Knowing your local laws when it comes to defense, use of force, discuss emergency plans, code words for when your family feels unsafe, contingencies of, even if it's at a mall, do you have a place that you go into this shopping mall or this building, and where are we going to meet if we get separated or something weird goes on? Know that. Save a few lawyers' contacts in your phone and maybe a few on paper in your wallet. Continue to improve your home security. I know broad strokes sounds like a lot of work, but just slow and steady knock off projects off the list. Last little bit would be like pay attention to changing in surroundings, neighborhoods. If you see something that doesn't quite fit in your little area or your regular commute or your little bubble, it might be a good time to introduce yourself to your neighbors and say, hey, did you notice this? This is a little funny.
Yep.
Having good neighbors and having healthy, strong relationships with your neighbors and your neighborhood, it makes a safer community. And if there is an issue that needs to be addressed in your community, we don't have a magic ball or a little bell that rings off when something weird is going on. We do need those phone calls, or if it's not a 911 emergency, almost every department or agency in the country has a liaison or a non-emergency number or an officer that is specifically there to address those complaints or forward it to the person that it's supposed to.
Yeah, that is all fantastic stuff to consider. And you're right, because a lot of times, people are afraid to pick up the phone and call the police because they're afraid that they're not going to be right. They might be getting made fun of. What they see isn't necessarily that big of a deal. But chances are, if it's enough to bother you to think about calling, go through and call. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
To be honest, yeah, I'd rather go to the complaint of, oh, there's some spooky car parked at the corner of the street and go and pull up and find out it's like the AC mechanic or whatever it is. At least
Or teenagers.
Or teenagers or
Good what
whatever.
teenagers do.
Yeah, which I've seen multiple times.
Benefits of working in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I've ruined a lot of first dates.
Yeah. Yeah. Those calls, like, yeah, oh, I haven't got my coffee in the morning, whatever. I get the radio call. I'm gonna go over there and check it out. I've gone, hey, there's a new car in my neighborhood that's been parked there for a few days. I go, investigate and find out, oh, you have new neighbors. I mean, might have saved you some trouble if you went over and knocked on the door and introduced yourself, but end of the day, I can do that, and I'd rather look like the jerk than the person that's scared about what's going on in their neighborhood. I don't mind.
So, as we're wrapping up here, guys, I want you to each share a funny story with me about something that's happened, to you on the job. That is, a PG level, because you've kind of alluded to some of the stuff that you guys have to deal with on a daily basis. But just kind of give us something funny that we can all just kind of to laugh about as we end our time together.
Should I start with?
Well, we both got some stories.
Yeah.
So. Oh, sure. Lay them on me.
Cuffs.
So this was going back quite a while. When I was still working on midnights, but where we change over the car, the guy hands me the radio and he's like, hey, I think there's a kitten loose around here. I had my leftover like taco or burrito or whatever I was eating, and I just kind of feed it and catch it, put it in a box and drive it over to a shelter. I went over the radio with like one kitten in custody, hold me out to this animal place, and I went there, and the night like vets were like thrilled to have me bring in this kitten, and they're like, do you want to see everything else in here? And I got to hold a baby raccoon that night, and then a baby skunk, and I got skunked by a baby skunk that night.
Ooh.
Yeah. It was a little dose, but it was enough of a dose to still smell for a little while.
Yeah. Ooh, goodness. So I got to ask, like, did you have to go change uniforms, or did you just smell like a skunk for the rest of your shift?
I just rolled with the punches. It's not the worst thing that's been on my uniform before, but I just kind of let it stew for a couple hours.
Gotcha.
So I also have an animal story because we need to find clean stories.
Right.
So my previous department, again, as working in an inner city, so reptiles are not something that you generally find in an inner city. And this family was in their back area having a little barbecue, and they called 911 because there was a lizard in a tree. Now, we don't live anywhere where there should be lizards outside.
Mm-hmm.
So I get there, and I'm with a rookie. I was a training officer at the time, and so generally what happens is people call 911 when they don't know how to figure things out, but like they call us and like we don't know how to figure it out. So like I was at no point was there like a sergeant yelling at me in the academy saying like, this is how you deal with an iguana in a tree. So I got there and I was like, all right, I guess I'm gonna try and get the iguana out of this tree. So it's an orange iguana. Iguanas are big, right? They're like 4 or 5 feet. So I kind of broomed. I hooked the limb of the tree that it was on, and I started pulling it down toward my rookie, who was going to grab it, and we were going to figure out what to do with it, I guess, once he had it. Well, now, if anybody's pulled a limb of a tree, right, what do you do as you pull it down? You're creating tension. So the broom slipped off of the tree, probably right as the iguana was near my rookie's hands, and it flung this iguana, I don't know, 20 feet in the air. It lands smack on the table of the family that's eating. And then it runs, and I didn't know that they could do this, but it ran on its tail and just its back legs, like up, and just it literally ran straight out of the yard and down the street, and we never saw it again.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, so somewhere in that city, there's a orange iguana with a story to tell.
Yeah, there was one more where we were working together, and we were parked next to each other, and we see a car's headlights just doing circles.
I was essentially like across from the police station.
Yeah, and we were just like, what is going on over there? And we're both tired at this point, exhausted, and we're like, all right, well, let's go check it out. And it was like
It was two kids,
yeah,
16-year-olds in their mom's minivan.
No, it was like a 16-year-old who just got his driver's license and his like younger brother, and he's like, I was trying to show him donuts. It's like you're going backwards in an all-wheel drive
Yeah, I think they
minivan.
were doing like reverse donuts in like Honda Odyssey or something.
Just-
It's the joys of working in the suburbs.
but like we
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
hidden, and we were just like, why are you doing this in front of us?
Whatever.
Yeah. That's something, man. Goodness. All right. So thank you guys both for being on the show, for taking the time to talk to me. Where can we find your podcast?
So the Rusty Cuffs podcast is available on pretty much every major podcast platform. And we do a lot of interacting with our listeners on Instagram. So it's Rusty Cuffs on Instagram. Matt, we'd love to hear from you.
And I'm cuffs_of_Rusty Cuffs on Instagram. I gotta get more followers, so please add me. I'm trying to put some police memes together every once in a while. We really appreciate feedback. We really like doing it, and we like the feedback and getting to talk to people that listen and have their own podcasts. It's really awesome. We really appreciate it, Andy.
Awesome, guys.
Yes,
Thank
thanks
you
for
so-
having us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for making your community safer. God bless you both.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
Well, that's everything that I have for the Secure Dad podcast for today. Thank you, friend, for listening. Thanks again to Officer Rusty and Officer Cuffs for being on the show today. You can find a link to their podcast in today's show notes. And as they noted in the interview, their show is very real and not always appropriate for every listening situation. Protect your home tonight with my family home security assessment. Download your copy at the link in the show notes. I'm Andy Murphy, and until next time, take care and be secure.